of, I get frustrated with Photoshop and stuff like
Right.
that. On the other hand, I think what's really interesting is that all of us are being affected by how much we process through the screen, which is this kind of weird square flat space now with rounded corners. That like you feel, it's not true. Obviously, as artists, there's such a huge difference between a painting and a picture of a painting. But
Right.
for so many people, they feel like they saw the real thing when they,
Right.
saw it on a screen. And so I've become really interested in this kind of quandary of like printed material that I can photograph and then reprint, and it all has to be generated by hand. I don't want to lose that.
Right.
But I like that sort of weird, it is a little like cinema. It's a blatant lie.
Right.
I think the things that are beautiful about painting are like that too. When you know that you're looking at something that is purporting to be not true, and collage is kind of like that too, because you're using recognizable things, and the way I do it, I reconstitute it hopefully so that it's both recognizable and unrecognizable at the same time.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a mouthful.
No, it's great. So there are a lot of things you touched on there that remind me of other conversations I've had with folks. My most recent episode was with folks down at the Web Gallery in Waxahachie, and they kind of focus on contemporary folk art, and there are the makers that are intentionally that are naive by nature, and then there are the others that are intentionally doing that as effect, and also, my first guest on the podcast was Stephen Charles, who went to Tyler.
Yeah.
And, I think he graduated around 96 and had done the Rome program.
Yep.
And,
I did that too.
Right.
So he's just a few years before me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but, great. So you went to Tyler.
Uh-huh.
You went to Rome.
I did. Yeah.
And so I'm sure... how can you live in Rome and it not be a transformative experience?
It is. For me, it's funny, I think Rome transforms everybody in different ways. For me, like, I was totally, I was a complete, like, pushover sucker for those big, huge, late 90s paintings that were coming out of, like, Francesco Clemente and... what's his name? Julian Schnabel.
Oh, right.
They're so, some of them are so glitzy and over the top, but Rome was full of that art. Like there was a lot of this kind of, big splashy art. But what was fun about it was how it was put into this context of like ancient spaces. And that right there is kind of a weird pastiche. Like Rome had, of course, it's all the heavy Roman classical stuff is amazing, but what makes it fun is at the same time, you have Gucci and like Vespas and like people. It's like this kind of jumble of old and new, and like there's still buildings that are like they're in disrepair, and so they're boarded up because it takes forever to get them, passed to fix up. So you'll pass something like that, and then right next door is like, extremely fancy, expensive Fendi, or So that was what really I loved about Rome. I just thought, in some ways, don't laugh, but I found it very much like Dallas, like unabashedly, kind of. Flashy, but not in a grotesque way, not like Vegas, just like, I like to dress up and who cares, it makes life more fun kind of thing. And so I felt very at home there, and I really enjoyed, it's not the epicenter of art, which is also kind of like Dallas, like it's not London or New York. Rome's always a little was like a little slightly behind.
Right.
And but that was kind of cool too, because you saw really strange, like kind of weird art and quirky things, and like it was not just didn't take itself so seriously.
Sure.
So those were the things that I kind of came away from that time in Rome, like, I should be open to whatever. Like, I don't, it was actually kind of good to get away from a really... Tyler was amazing. It was a great experience, but it is very much like kind of, housed under the shadow of New York, and we'd go every weekend and see all these like incredible shows and talk about art, and it's very kind of self-aware.
Right.
And Rome was not like that. And so when I left there, because I did it my second year, and I came back, and I went to Skowhegan too after that, and it was interesting.
See, now that's a different experience.
That's a different experience. So I had all these experiences, but I have to say that intense time was really important for me, because I learned that there are so many different ways to be an artist. There are so many different attitudes towards art. And it was kind of really the beginning of this new, millennia, but it's the beginning also of this time where you really start to see the disintegration of these kind of concentrated art centers because of the internet, and because of like, you don't have to now live in LA or New York. You can, do other things, and that sort of energy was beginning then.
Sure.
Yeah.
So tell me about Skowhegan. I understand there are cows.
Cows and amazing fields full of lightning bugs. Fireflies are beautiful, but when you see them like en masse, thousands of them, it's really breathtaking. They also had those big Luna moths. I don't know if you've seen pictures of them. They're like the size of like your hands put together.
I've seen one in person once, but I'm like, I cannot believe that is really a thing, right?
Yeah. So I woke up one morning. It literally was like from one morning to the next. Like they weren't there, and then the next morning I woke up and it was like an episode of Star Trek.
Wow.
Like they were just all plastered on the screen door and the window, the screens on the windows. And it was like, whoa, these things are really big. And they don't move even when you open the door, but they're just everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very magical place, Maine.
So what is the setup like there? Or do you get your own like cabin to work out of, or
you share a cabin usually with one other person? I think maybe there were some with 3 people, and then they have these kind of like long barns that are or studio spaces that are divided. They have those like half walls.
Okay. Yep.
So everybody has a space to work, and it's so open that I'm a really kind of puritanical person with myself. I'm like, I can't go someplace and not work.
Right.
But you don't have to. Sincerely, there were people there who I know right now are like, blowing up and doing amazing tons of things. But while they were there, they would smoke pot and hang out on the dock and sun outside, and that was cool. And they would sketch, and that was it. And you would have.
That seems like a wasted opportunity, doesn't it?
I don't know, because that's the whole thing, is you don't know what is going on in people's minds. Like everyone, that they really are so receptive and respectful of artists. They don't expect anything from you.
Right.
They expect you to kind of like participate and interact, but as far as level of production, you can draw and relax, and some people like paint it all. You know.
I guess you can make an argument that, hey, that person is developing relationships that they can take with them. Yeah. Right. But on the other hand, it's like the opportunities for feedback from these visiting artists. Right. Yeah. Maybe you're not taking advantage of that. Right.
Well, yes and no, because I have to say it also depends on the visiting artist. So the year that I was there, we had Kara Walker was a resident artist. So they always have one artist who stays there for a little while, and then they have a series of visiting artists. And so then it was, Vic Muniz came, and Shazia, no, not Shazia, Shirin Nishat, the filmmaker, came, and oh gosh, what's his name? Lavelle. He's a great. I forget his first name. Sorry, I'm having
no, it's okay.
But they, it's funny. So you get to sign up with 2 artists. So they have 5 or 6, and then they have a poet who comes. But what you know of an artist and how those artists really are is really interesting because you might really admire somebody's work, and they come into your studio and don't have a whole lot to offer you personally, either because of their personality or because maybe they just don't know what to say about your work, or so it's a funny thing. And then Whitfield Lavelle, I remember him because I had signed up for Vic Muniz and Whitfield Lavelle, and I really liked his work. He was very helpful, very, very helpful, but a lot of people hadn't signed up with him because he was a more figurative artist, and we had a lot of conceptual artists or something that year. Right. And it's funny because in retrospect, I think he was, a lot of people who did sign up with him, he was just really so giving and spent a lot of time, would come back and check on you, and so. It's, you don't know, artists are strange creatures. You see the work and you like the work, but that person may not have been the best in terms of information,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it also makes you think about, choosing an art school you want to go to based on the faculty's work versus what they can give. Right. Yeah. Because some of those schools kind of hang their hats on the work of the faculty, but do we really know how transformative that experience might be?
You're right. And one thing that is, for me, just I would say a critique of the art school system in the United States is that, and in general, we put so much emphasis now, and I think it's just pure capitalism, on degrees and credentials and all these things, and it does help, if you're getting a show that you went to Yale or that you went to Skowhegan or that you showed X, Y, and Z. But one of the best instructors that I have ever had, and she was at Tyler, Donna Nelson. She's the last of a group of artists who she came through the what is that called, the Artist League. Right. And the Whitney program, which, back in the 60s was not really a school. You don't get credentials. You don't get an MFA or any. And now there are so many great artists who don't have degrees who could be great teachers. But, schools won't credential them. Right. And so in other places, people seek out other artists to mentor with and other teachers, and there's more options. And I think we're very limited that way. We lock out a lot of great true teachers just because they didn't go through these kind of official channels. Right. And I'm so grateful that I got to talk to her because she was really, really amazing person to work with. Yeah, I mean, I guess in the old days, before the MFA was the MFA, I mean, there would have been, apprentice sort of programs, right? Where, you want to be an artist, then go study at the foot of this person. Right. Right. And, nowadays, if you want to teach at a school like that, then you need to have had your terminal degree. Right. And I think they're trying, you get visiting artists that come through, and that's really important, I think, to, have experiences with other people, because you don't know who the person is who's going to reach a particular student. But but yeah, I think that could be something that could be looked at, how you get artists with life experience back into the mix. Right. Yeah. So when so this is roughly 2001. You graduate with your MFA from Tyler, and you've done your time in Rome. You've spent time with fireflies and giant moths out in Skowhegan in Maine. Yeah. And where did you go from there? Were you attracted to New York? At that point, or where did your
When did you wind up coming back to Dallas? Or?
Just really like a year or two later. And actually, I came back to Dallas, and at that point I had been like, involved with somebody